All right. Hello again, Adventures, and welcome to another exciting daily vlog. This is daily vlog number 2. I think we're at 91 now. Nonsense. So today, we got some big announcements that have got me excited about Essence20 stuff. So, I'm gonna drink Wasser, which is German for water. If you ever wonder why I randomly speak German when I don't actually speak the language in any way, shape, or form, it's because my first girlfriend was partially fluent in it and would randomly say things in German. And they just stuck in my head, so. Anyway, so Renegade Con is a thing that Renegade Game Studios does, I don't know, a few times a year, once a year, I don't know. They pitch it as kind of like an online convention style thing for specifically for stuff that they make, but really it's a marketing push, you know. I've got something on my glasses that drive me nuts. Well, that'll have to do. All right, so so basically it's a Nintendo Direct for Renegade is effectively what it is. They announced a few new things. They had an entire live stream about a new expansion to Heroes of the Grid. If you're not familiar with Heroes of the Grid, Heroes of the Grid is their Power Rangers board game. I do not own it. I would love to own it. It's ungodly expensive. As you can see, like, I own quite a few board games. Like, everything over here, this is all board games, and I have a lot more than just that. Those are just the ones that fit on my shelf right now. I like board games. I can't play board games because, again, social anxiety and agoraphobia and things like that means I never get a chance to actually play them. So all the board games I own, I just own them. I don't get to play them. And so I haven't had a real pressing need to start investing in Heroes of the Grid because I can't play it with anybody. And, you know, you can only play with yourself for so long before, you know, things start chafing. So, so that in and of itself, cool. It's a cool game. Don't get me wrong. It's not like I'm saying it's a bad game or anything like that. It looks amazing. And the reviews I've read for it say it's a very, very fun game. I've watched some live plays of it. It's great. But that's not the reason I focus on Renegade Con, and it's not the reason you guys are here either. They did announce 2 new Essence20 books, and both of them have me super excited. The first one, the Transformers role-playing game Techno-Organic Secrets Sourcebook. Well, what does Techno-Organic Secrets mean? We're getting the Beast Wars, guys! I grew up on Beast Wars. It was one of my favorite shows ever. If anyone doesn't know, the original Transformers cartoon came out in the mid-'80s. And that's when the Transformers, robots in disguise. Autobots fight. Really interesting thing about the theme song for that is it actually uses what's called mixed meter, which means that the meter of the music is not always constant, or rather, the actual meter, the beats per second is actually relatively constant, but they keep changing how many beats are in a measure. So you'll have these things like Transformers, robots in disguise, 2, 3, 4, Autobot, dun 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 dun. And it's anyway. So That's what's considered G1, Generation 1. That's with Optimus Prime and Megatron and all that. Fast forward to the mid-90s, there was a TV show called Beast Wars, where instead of it being Autobots and Decepticons, it was Maximals and Predacons. And the whole plot of it is a new Megatron. This is not the same Megatron as before. This is a new one who just happens to have the same name and considers himself kind of the successor to Megatron. Discovers this thing called the Golden Disc. And this disc is supposed to basically have all these prophecies on it that can be used to allow the Decepticons to take over Cybertron. And so they go into deep space using this thing called a transwarp drive, which apparently not only can cross vast distances of space, but it also has time travel abilities, something like that. And the only Maximal ship close enough is a ship called the Axelon, which is captained by a bot named Optimus Primal. See, it's not Optimus Prime, it's Optimus Primal. Or that's the name that he eventually takes. Because I think they actually choose new names once they get their new forms. So anyway, they get into a battle above some unnamed planet. And both ships crash, and the planet itself has such massive deposits of raw energon that their robot forms will just cook if they walk around outside their shielded ships. And so they all scan the various wildlife and create beast forms that will protect their robotic bodies, and that's how it starts. The Maximals want to get back to Cybertron so they can get some because they're explorers. They want to get some actual like commandos over here to capture the Decepticons, and the Decepticons are trying to use the vast amounts of energon deposits to be able to take over Cybertron eventually and turn them into a superpower and all this stuff. So that's where it comes from. It was a great series. It went on for 3 seasons, and then there was a sequel series called Beast Machines, where they finally capture Megatron. They make it back to Cybertron, but Megatron is able to escape at the last second, and then just takes over all of Cybertron, and they have to form this kind of resistance group and fight against him. It was nonsense crazy, and the art style changed massively when it got to Beast Machines. I was not a super huge fan of Beast Machines, but it kept all the voice actors and everything. Thank you, phone. So it was real cool. Anyway, so back to this. The Techno-Organic Secrets source book says it's got a March 2025 release, so we've got a fair amount of time before it's going to come out. But the stuff that it introduces. New origins and influences for Cybertronians who take the forms of beasts, including Fusor combinations and how to unlock the power of transmetal forms. Transmetal was a Season 2 thing where in order to sell more toys, they all of their beast forms changed into these cool, like, metal beast hybrid things. Like Rat Trap went from being just like a gray rat to this kind of red and chrome rat with wheels. And Cheetor got a bunch of like thruster wing things, and yeah, they were super cool. Optimus Primal got a surfboard with a jet on the back of it. It was really cool. The cool thing about the Transmetals was all the Transmetals had a beast form, a robot form, and then a vehicle form as well. And so that was really cool. So that's what Transmetal is. Threat stats and contacts for key characters who call the Maximals, Dinobots, Predacons, Viacons, and other teams home. Explore what-if scenarios with deviations of signature characters. 13 new general perks, 5 new weapons, new shields, and animal companion rules means that your Cybertronian won't be alone in their adventure in unfamiliar planets, and guidance for creating Beast Wars style campaigns with a limited recurring cast of characters. That was another thing, whereas G1, there was tons of different Transformers. For Beast Wars, I think the Maximals in and of themselves were there's Optimus Primal, Rat Trap, Cheetor, and Rhinox. And in the first episode, Dinobot, who used to be a Predacon, joins them. And that's really all of the Maximals. They do eventually add Tigatron and Air Razor. And then a little bit further on, they get Silverbolt. But that's not like Silverbolt doesn't come until season 2. And Tigatron and Air Razor are both kind of secondary characters. They don't show up in every single episode. So for the most part, the Maximals are only 5 bots. And the Predacons are Megatron, Scorponok, what's the other one? Spider something. Man, I can't remember what his name was. Predacons. What were the Predacons? No, let's go. Predacons Beast Wars, not the G1. Stop it. Beast Wars. What was his name? I'm feeling really stupid because I can't remember who they were, so... Just give me a freaking... All right, Tarantulas. That's his name. It says Megatron, Scorponok, Tarantulas, Pterosaur, Waspinator, and then they eventually add Black Arachnia and Inferno. There's also... I can't remember the other dude's name. Anyway... They had a Fusor on their team too. But anyways, so but because of that, for Beast Wars, they couldn't have the kind of rotating cast and all that stuff. You only had those 5 Maximals and what was it? Megatron, Tarantulas, Scorponok, Pterosaur, Waspinator. Yeah, it was basically 5v5, and then they added a few other ones from pods kind of crashing down. So you had to kind of create situations where one side could win and one side could lose, but nobody ever died. So yeah, that in and of itself is pretty cool. And again, I'm such a massive Beast Wars fan. That's what got me into Transformers. So 100% I am definitely getting that book. But the other thing that has got me very, very excited. They announced another new source book. Power Rangers role-playing game Through the Shattered Grid source book. Guys, I cannot tell you how excited I am about this. Again, I'm slowly making my way through all of the Boom Studios comics. They are amazing. They're so phenomenally well written. The artwork is just mind-bogglingly good. But the stories themselves are really, really cool, and they allow the writers to explore stuff that in the television series just never really gets a chance to be explored. Like a really good example, the Phantom Ranger from Power Rangers Turbo. He was a character is directly ported over from Sentai. In Sentai, he was called VR Master. Because of how they chose to adapt Power Rangers Turbo, because for Super Sentai, the Super Sentai show that they adapted for Turbo was Car Ranger. And Car Ranger was a parody season. It was a joke to the point where they actually had a character who was just a super Power Rangers fan or a Super Sentai fan. And in one episode, they actually create their own ranger suit and try to help the rangers out. And the whole thing was meant to be just a joke. And then they tried to adapt it into something a little bit more serious. And that's why Power Rangers Turbo just feels so awkward and weird. Because they wanted, they basically took a parody series and tried to redub it as a serious series. And it just didn't work very well. So anyway, because again, VR Master was just kind of a joke, the Phantom Ranger never really got explored. And there was an idea during Power Rangers in Space that they were going to actually explain who the Phantom Ranger was. And at one point, they were thinking about making it Billy, and then another point, it was going to actually be Zordon. It's really interesting. Well, in the comic series, they actually get to explore who the Phantom Ranger is, where they come from, and you actually find out that the Phantom Ranger is this character called the Morphonaut. And that whole story in and of itself is complex and interesting, but they're actually linked to the first group of people who discovered the morphing grid. That predates like the Morphin Masters and all that stuff. So having a source book that is focused on Shattered Grid's storyline, like they've had Shattered Grid stuff in the Power Rangers RPG already. The Ranger Slayer's in there, and I think Drakon shows up in there, and they've talked about stuff in the world of the Coinless. This one in particular is going to focus very heavily on not just Shattered Grid, but the comic series in general. I think the reason that they use through the Shattered Grid is Shattered Grid was probably the biggest event for the Power Rangers comics, and it really did inspire literally everything else until the end of the Boom Studios original run. But they're going to be taking stuff out of the Necessary Evil arc, and other stuff like that. So what are they adding in it? Well, protect the grid with the first two non-Ranger roles, the Magna Defender and the Guardian of Eltar. So Magna Defender was a character in Lost Galaxy. They're one of my favorite Rangers because they're just so badass. But they're not technically a Ranger. They are an ally, very similar to something like the Blue Centurion from Turbo, the Phantom Ranger. Those technically aren't, or I guess the Phantom Ranger is a Ranger because Ranger is his name, but the Blue Centurion wasn't. Orin, who was a character I think in season 3 of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, or Ninjor wasn't a Ranger, stuff like that. So this is the first time that you get to play technically as a non-Ranger, but Magna Defender is almost a Ranger. I mean, in Lost Galaxy, he started off as a ghost that kind of inhabited and took over the body of Mike. The Red Ranger Leo wasn't the original Red Ranger for the Lost Galaxy Rangers. His brother Mike was actually the one that pulled out the Quasar Saber, but he fell into a giant chasm. And so he gave the Quasar Saber to Leo, and Leo became the Red Ranger of Lost Galaxy. Well, Mike comes back after being saved by the Magna Defender's ghost, basically. And as payment, the Magna Defender takes over and uses Mike's body to kind of exact his revenge against Trakina and on all those bad guys. Eventually, the Magna Defender kind of comes to terms with himself, and he just gives his powers over to Mike. And Mike gets to basically be the Magna Defender going forward. One of the interesting things about the Magna Defender in Lost Galaxy is the Sentai version, same basic story, but the Sentai version, the way that he morphed was he just used the Magna Defender's sword, which just always existed. Kind of like the Dragon Dagger or Saba. even when those Rangers demorph, those weapons remain manifest. Whereas like the Power Sword, that only happened when they were morphed. So that's how Super Sentai did it. Mike, on the other hand, they wanted it to be a little bit closer to a Ranger, so he had this morpher. It was a 2-part wrist morpher, and so on one part he would pull out this little ring, and then he would insert the ring thing into the other part, and that was the Magnamorpher. It actually wasn't, because again, the Sentai version didn't have a morpher. What they had done is they had actually taken an aura changer, which were the morphers for Dairanger, which was the series that they took the Thunder Zords from, but they never used any of the costumes except for the White Ranger's costume. All the other Dairanger costumes they never used, and they also never used the Dairanger morphers. And so, yeah, they just took a Dairanger morpher and used that as the Magna Defender morpher. So anyway, and then Guardian of Eltar was a thing, again, real deep into the comics lore. The Guardians of Eltar were effectively, or the Guardian of Eltar was the head of it. They were effectively the Power Rangers before the Power Rangers. And they didn't technically morph or anything like that. But they did use grid energy to kind of power them up and stuff like that. So that's in and of itself very cool. And then also 3 new influences and 7 new origins. Is your character from the Coinless Resistance or a void-touched hero who survived an encounter with the Praetor? Call on some of the 15 new contacts for aids, like Grace Sterling, the AI Z, and some friends you can trust, like Drakon, Lord in Exile. Yeah, that's a thing that happens in the comic series, is Drakon doesn't die, and he kind of helps out a couple of the Ranger teams every so often, but you're never quite sure if he's really helping them. And then the final thing, 42 threats from the Eltarian Super Team Sentry Force 4 to Spayark, the Death Ranger, which was another really, really big deal in the comic series. So, yeah, overall, I am super pumped about that. The artwork looks incredible because you have, I'm not going to show it here because that takes effort and work, but you can see Drakon on his stone throne in the background, with the various helmets of the Rangers on there, which is taken directly from the cover art of one of the Shattered Grid comics. But then in the foreground, you see the new Green Ranger, because in the comic books, after Tommy gets the White Ranger powers, Grace Sterling creates a new Green Ranger using chaos energy. And he has a cool, fancy, spikier looking suit. You also have the Magna Defender looking badass with his cape. And then you have the Guardian of Eltar there with his cool, like, double blade, the thing. So I'm really interested into how they differentiate these quote-unquote non-Ranger roles, which, again, they're technically Rangers. Like, the Magna Defender is considered an ally, not a Ranger. But he morphs. He has a suit. And in Power Rangers, not true in Sentai, but in Power Rangers, he even had a morpher. Sue's effectively a Ranger. He just wasn't technically a Ranger. He was a Ranger ally, but he filled the place of the 6th Ranger for Lost Galaxy, to the point where in Super Mega Force, the Silver Ranger could actually turn into the Magna Defender because he got all the 6th Ranger keys. And then the Guardian of Eltar. The Guardian of Eltar, again, is technically a Power Ranger. It's just he's a Power Ranger before there were Power Rangers. So I'm interested to see how that one works too, because while the Guardians of Eltar don't quote-unquote morph, they do have armor that they wear and power weapons very similar to Rangers. They're just not technically Rangers because the Rangers didn't exist then. If you want to get really technical, technically the Morphonaut would probably be the first quote-unquote Power Ranger, but not really. according to the comics lore. So, yeah, so that in and of itself, really, really cool. The AI Z, I really like Z. Z is cool. Grace Sterling is an interesting Kiki character that I think Grace Sterling in the comics could have been a really, really cool character. I don't think they quite took full advantage of what the character could be, because she starts off like they did everything they could to make her seem like she was the good guy, and they were kind of painting this idea that Zordon may not be the good guy that everybody thought he was. But again, I didn't start reading the comics until years after they were published, and I already knew what Grace Sterling would eventually become. And so effectively what happens with Grace Sterling is they do everything they can to make her look like the good guy, and they go so far, like it's so blatantly obvious that they're trying to make you like her and not like Zordon, that you just really easily kind of see through. Like, she's too altruistic, and she seems way too forgiving, and then as you go along, you start realizing that no, she has her own motives, and she doesn't technically, I don't think she ever becomes a quote-unquote bad guy, but she definitely does act as an antagonist to the Rangers in a few of these storylines. So, yeah, like I said, I mean, I am super excited about this. I can't wait to get my hands on these. They look gorgeous. The little bit of art that we have of them just looks really, really good. Oh, man. In the background of the Shattered Grid, you also have Rhino Sentries and Tyranno Sentries, which are really, really cool looking. The Rhino Sentries have these big old shield things on them. They're great. Oh, it's so cool. And then again, for Transformers, the weird thing about the Transformers Techno-Organic Secrets, because again, the Techno-Organic Secrets is going to be adapting Beast Wars and then also Beast Machines, because when they talk specifically about threat stats and contacts for key characters who call the Maximals, Dinobots, Predacons, Viacons, specifically the Viacons are the bad guys in Beast Machines. So the Techno-Organic Secrets is not going to be exclusively Beast Wars stuff. They're obviously going to be adapting Beast Machines stuff too, which again is cool. Beast Machines was significantly less popular than Beast Wars was. And even like Beast Machine fans can kind of admit that season 1, because if I remember correctly, Beast Machines ran for 2 seasons, and season 1 went off the deep end really, really fast, where they basically tried telling a bunch of stories that didn't really make sense. And then by season 2, they started getting back on it. But the weird thing about the artwork is you have G1 Megatron in there, a couple, I would assume, Fusors in the back, and then in the center, you have what kind of looks like, I'm going to see if I can't see it even closer here. I guess it's supposed to be Rhinox, but it doesn't look like Rhinox. Like, it's got the color scheme and everything, but the face is wrong and everything. Like, it looks like when Beast Wars was first announced, they did release, it started off as just some toys, and then they turned it into a TV series. And Optimus Primal, the first version of him, wasn't a monkey. He wasn't an ape, or a gorilla, actually. He wasn't a gorilla. He was a bat. And some of the aspects of that version of Optimus Primal were later adapted, like the gorilla version of Optimus Primal, for no explicable reason, had a pair of scimitars. And that was taken directly from the bat version of him. And so the artwork here looks like, I'm going to just zoom in crazy close to see if I can see. It kind of looks like the original toy line run of the Beast Wars stuff, before the television show was even a thing, they had a limited run of a few Beast Wars Transformers, and that's kind of what this Rhinox looks like, because Rhinox in the show is this massive, heavy set robot. Like, he is super, super tall and super, super wide. Like, he's just a real big guy. And this just doesn't look like him at all. So, yeah, and the golden disc is in there too, and it looks kind of weird. Anyway, enough me trying to describe a picture to you that you guys can't see. I'm excited about these things. I can't wait to see where they go with it. I was getting a little bit worried with all the bundles and everything that they were doing, that perhaps they were starting to kind of wind down the original 3 Essence20 games. Or at least Power Rangers into the Transformers. G.I. Joe, they just seem to be putting out more and more books with more and more complexities in them. But I was starting to get a little bit worried that we might be seeing the end of those lines. And nope, they still got cool stuff going on, and I'm super excited. Hope you guys are too. Again, always interested to hear from you guys. Are you guys excited about the Shattered Grid stuff? The Magna Defender or the Guardian of Elptar roles? Are you more interested in the Beast Wars stuff, the Techno-Organic secrets? Or are you waiting to hear what's going on next with G.I. Joe or My Little Pony? Let me know in the comments down below. Otherwise, again, it's all from me today. We'll see you guys in the next time. All right? Bye-bye.